Your takeaway is too far to the inside and you like a more neutral start to your swing. If we have a look at this move from down the line, the club head is moving off the target line to the inside too much, too early, putting the club head very much behind you. Some players might call this a flat backswing, others may call it underplane. What we need to do is find exactly why this is happening so we can target the right part of the swing to solve the issue. The first things we're going to focus on are the club face and the glove hand. If you take the club back to about hip height and you notice that the club face is pointing up at the sky and you can very clearly see the logo on the back of the glove, the main reason the club has moved to the inside is forearm rotation, because forearm rotation also rotates the club face open and exposes the back of the glove hand. If we look at this from face on, when there's excessive forearm rotation, your left arm will rotate above the right arm very early in the backswing. So the simple solution to this is for the first few feet of the backswing, your focus is to keep the right arm above the left. And by doing this, we will turn an inside takeaway with a very open club face to a more neutral takeaway with a more neutral club face. Again, focusing on the club face and the glove hand, if we stop at hip height and instead we're seeing that the club face is either horizontal or pointing slightly down, and the glove hand wrist is very bowed or bent backwards, it's the hinging of the wrist that are causing the club to move to the inside. So if we demonstrate this with a neutral position and I isolate the wrist movement, by bowing the wrist the club moves in, and by cupping the wrist the club moves out. So it simply means that you are adding your wrist hinge too early in the backswing, and that's what's taking the club to the inside. Now very often this kind of takeaway can actually lead to a very good position at the top. But if you don't like the rerouting of the club, we simply have to delay the hinging of the wrist. For right-handed golfers, I generally find it's more effective to focus on what the right hand is doing than the left when making changes. If we notice what happens when the left wrist is bowed, the right wrist hinges backwards. So if the inside takeaway is caused by the wrist hinge happening too early, we simply need to delay when the right wrist starts to hinge backwards. So if we look at setup from face on, we can see that the right arm and wrist look in a reasonably straight line. So instead of allowing the wrist to hinge early, we'd like to maintain this straight feeling for the first few feet of the backswing. And what we'll notice is instead of hinging early and having the club move to the inside, if we maintain that straight right wrist for the first few feet of the backswing, we end up with a very neutral start. Now as our third possibility, if again we take the club back to about hip height, and although it's inside, we notice that the club face looks reasonably neutral, and so do the wrists, we need to look at the relationship between the turning of the body and the lifting of the arms. If we isolate those two movements, only turning the body would actually create a very flat and inside backswing. On the other hand, if we only lift the arms as they do in the backswing, the club moves up and to the outside. If we have the inside takeaway, it simply means we're turning the body and then later adding arm lift. So if we can add the arm lift earlier, we will turn the inside takeaway into a more neutral one. The feeling is going to be delaying the turning of the hips and starting the backswing with a little bit of shoulder turn and some lift of the arms. Once we've got to about hip height, we can then continue the turn by adding hips and continue the swing. As a final thought, if you're unsure of the technicalities of why you have the inside takeaway, you can simply work on a drill based on the premise that if you want to change a movement, exaggerate the opposite. I've got two sticks on the ground set up just outside my right foot, one angled inwards and one outwards. The red line represents the club shaft as it arrives at about hip height when it's angled too far inwards. So of course, if we're after neutral, the exaggerated opposite would be to have the club shaft angled outwards. To begin with, as your practice swing, take the club back to the white stick and pause. This is teaching you what a neutral takeaway is going to feel like. But then from here, you have to complete the swing, meaning go up to the top, swing down and through and finish. And this is teaching you how to complete the swing from the new position. Now if you can do this in stages, 1, pause, and swing through, then you can actually hit balls doing the same. Set up to your golf ball, start the swing back, but stop on the white line, and then from here, hit a shot.